Hi. If you are about to leave the Watchtower organization, about to be disfellowshipped, or have been disfellowshipped, what do you face ahead of you? It is not the same for everyone. Much depends on the length of time you were in the organization, if you have family members remaining in the organization, and how committed you were to its teachings. Dr. Bergman, in his book, Jehovah's Witnesses and the Problem of Mental Illness, he presents here some of the frequent and common responses and emotions that people go through when they leave the Watchtower. Above all, to recover, one needs this time to verbalize a wide variety of mixed feelings. Fear, anger, jealousy, depression, and disappointment are common. One helping a witness leaving should always realize that they will say many things that they will likely regret later, and often do not mean even when said. Some of this is an effort to try out or test a person who is endeavoring to help, in order to ensure that this person is unconditionally accepting. The witness will probably experience much anger over, and then he has in quotes, the many years they wasted, end of quote. The families postponed, or the children they did not have, because Armageddon was just around the corner, or the college degree they didn't complete because of the society's policy. These verbalizations are normal, but can be counterproductive in that they can overfocus one's attention on the negating aspects of involvement. Talking about these things is necessary, but all too often involvement in other meaningful activities is a diversion needed in order to let time, the greatest healer of all, carry out its important work. This might also be an important time to have a complete physical checkup, and especially have a stress test. One should be especially conscious of blood sugar level, blood pressure, cholesterol, and other levels as measured by a standard blood workup evaluation, all of which are affected by emotional trauma. The loss of one's religion requires a grief process that is often very similar to the loss of a loved one in death. The stages of grief also apply in the case of the loss of one's religious belief structure. This is why replacement of both the witness faith and social system is so necessary. The more effective the replacement, the less the grief. He also mentions sleep can be affected at that initial time, and I'd have to say that was true of me, both just prior to being disfellowshipped and then after disfellowshipping. I found myself sleeping a lot as an escape. But for some people it might be that they stay awake and can't fall asleep. So it's different for different people. The first few weeks after a disfellowshipping may be the most critical period. The conflict is finally resolved because the break has been made, although often unwillingly. One cannot now easily go back. The trauma is such that many people find it almost impossible to function for days or longer after being disfellowshipped. So I was in the case of not being able to function. I just was crying all the time or sleeping. Those were my two alternatives. Okay, he also mentions, although worrying about it generally causes more problems, it is impossible to realize that one, in fact, does have much control over one's mind and thoughts. One can, and practice makes this easier, control one's thoughts. It is easy when leaving to dwell on the witnesses, their problems, deficiencies, etc. But this can become a habit that can delay recovery. Remember, although hard at first, most witnesses do recover, and most never go back, nor do they want to. One can also, to some extent, learn to efficiently or effectively monitor one's thoughts. When negative thoughts about life, death, and especially the witnesses, one's anger towards them, one's hurt, etc., are precipitated, try to drive them out of your mind. This process can be helped by doing something physically involved, going somewhere else, associating with someone else, or doing new things. Thinking about and discussing one's problems with them can be helpful to a certain degree, but dwelling on them can cause severe difficulties. One is often filled with anger and rage and apt to want to curse out or condemn the witnesses. By and large, this only hurts the person with the rage. The witnesses often are not concerned about your rage, and in their mind at least it only justifies the disfellowshipping. They are apt to assume you are demonized, even though your anger, whether expressed openly as rage or inwardly as depression, is fully normal and occurs in most persons who were attached to the witness theology and left. Losing anything that has meaning and importance in one's life causes trauma. Loss of one's religion, often the central motivator for the devout, and especially for those in an involved, demanding religion such as the witnesses, will cause trauma. Expect it, and then deal with it. The next time we're going to talk about one of his suggestions for help. But just in this area, what I do think is helpful is this idea about controlling your thoughts and not being consumed by negativity and bitterness. So I thought to read you the advice in Philippians 4, verse 8. It reads, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things." Now, I know this is hard because I went through this and I was consumed with thinking about what had just happened and the loss of my family and being depressed. And it took a lot of effort to divert attention to something more positive or just something different. Watching a movie, reading a book, a literature book, anything that took me away was probably very useful at that moment of my life. But I think especially putting something good in place of the negative stuff was the thing that helped me get past. I'm going to put 2 links. The first one is one based on a reading from Jerry Bridges' book, Practice of Godliness, that fell into my hands soon after we left when I started to read again. This was what I put was as a title, Thought Life of Ex-Witnesses is the first defense against bitterness. What are we feeding our minds? And the second one are the last thoughts of Ray Franz in his book, Crisis of Conscience, which are really quite lovely. This one is The Purpose of Prophecy priority of love and the centrality of Christ. So David and me discuss a little at the end about this, his last thoughts. Thank you.